All
I'm
right.
not, yeah, sorry. I don't know what happened
Nope.
there.
Yeah. So let's start again. So I'm Ann Arnott. I'm the Executive Director of the PTDA Foundation. On behalf of the Foundation, I want to welcome you to today's webinar, How to Better Manage Your Energy to Feel Less Stress. This webinar is being hosted by the PT Workforce Initiative and has been made possible through the generous contributions to the PTDA Foundation. Visit ptworkforce.org for more resources to help you navigate the new world of workforce recruitment and retention. So a few housekeeping items. All attendees are muted to eliminate background noise. We won't be using the raise hand feature, but if you have questions during the webinar, please submit them by using the questions panel that you see on the screen. We'll reserve time at the end of the webinar so that Dr. Ackrill can address your questions. And then today's presentation slides and recordings will be emailed to you next week and will also be available in the webinar archive section of ptworkforce.org following the program. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Cindi Ackrill. Dr. Ackrill is a leader in the field of leveraging stress for optimal productivity, leadership, health, and happiness. A graduate of Duke University and the University of Maryland School of Medicine, Dr. Ackrill practiced primary care medicine, then transitioned to applied neuroscience to address a variety of mood and behavior challenges, including stress. She went on to certify in wellness and leadership coaching and stress education. Currently, Dr. Ackrill leads workshops and coaches leaders, individuals, and teams to co-create real-life strategies to advance performance and leadership goals, avoid disengagement and burnout, and flourish in a complex world. She contributes widely as a stress and behavior change expert to a range of media, including CNN, Katie Couric, The Today Show, Huffington Post, and multiple print and digital venues. Dr. Ackrill, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. And I could summarize all that as I became interested in stress because I burned out way ahead of the pack. And I thought there's something wrong. I don't understand why we're not taught anything about stress. In fact, I burned out early on in medical school and fellow physicians were saying, just stress less. And I thought, well, how? But nobody could tell me. So through that theme of all the different things I've done in life, stress has always been of interest. And I love sharing this information because we're all on this journey to figure out how to be here and make it easier and make it more joyful and more aligned with our purpose. And that's tough in a complex world when we weren't taught the tools to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my screen share here. And you let me know that this actually works.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, you see slide number 1?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and if you'll keep up with questions for me, that would be fabulous.
Yep.
So a few housekeeping things on my end. First of all, there is a handout which I hope you can download and play along with, but the value of having a handout, 1, is something to follow, but 2 is that you can just listen. You really don't have to take notes. I want you to listen and kind of feel for what resonates for yourself in this complex topic, and you don't need to write a thing down. Specifically today, we're going to talk about 5 things to know about stress and 5 things you can do about stress. And I'm going to introduce some models for thinking about the process of stress because 1, our brain loves models, and 2, that simplifies for you the places where you can make adjustments to make your life a little bit easier. And speaking of those adjustments, listen for little tweaks you can make. This is not about overhauling your life and throwing everything away and feeling badly about what you've been doing. It's about learning to figure out the small changes you can make that would add up to way more energy at the end of the day, way more happiness and health. So listen for the little things because it's only when we change the little things that we make lasting change. So with all of that, let's plow in. So really no secret that we've all had enough. In fact, we'd all had enough long before COVID. The World Health Organization had declared stress the original pandemic, not really, but had declared it an epidemic before our pandemic. And now we just are blasted. So right as I ask people, think about what's been your number one stressor in recent times. What is it that's really pushing your buttons? And I've gotten a wide variety of answers. These are some of these include things that are particular to your organization. The competition's expanding, employee recruitment and retention is a challenge absolutely everywhere you go. Uncertainty is for all of us. Life has just been disrupted. And how has that made you feel? Think for a moment if you just had a one word for what you're feeling from all of this challenge and stress. And here are some of the things I've been hearing. Number one is exhausted, absolutely exhausted. We have been processing and processing and processing change, uncertainty, awful news, witnessing other people's grief, some people feeling grief firsthand, financial disruption, political disruption, and we're exhausted because it takes our brain energy to do all of that processing, to make sense of it, to figure out what our reaction to it's going to be. And we just wake up and do it again the next day. So we're all tired and probably more emotional than normal. Some people feel numb, some people feel stuck, others are more critical, or just feel that, what is the word you keep hearing, the lingering that's going on, and it's just keeps going. So what can we do about it? Unfortunately, this has been our approach to most of stress management. And it's been just, okay, I'll get rid of that problem. I'll get rid of that problem. And after a while, the arm gets tired of whacking the moles. It's not working. And we weren't taught an organized way to handle stress. So then we feel kind of badly, like it's a problem we have. And really, a lot of the literature out there, a lot of the hype that's out there makes it feel like it's our personal problem, that we can't handle it, when the reality is we have too much to handle. And there's systemic stress. There's systemic stress in our world, to our earth. We can't change all of that. We can change our own relationship with stress and wind up happier and healthier. But it isn't all our problem. At the same time, we can learn a lot so that we can change our relationship with stress and make it better. But before we go on, I think it's important to decide, what are we actually talking about? What is stress? It's a term that's been thrown around so much that it's gotten sloppy. We confuse what's stress that we're feeling versus the stressor, the thing that's happening. So here's a good definition of stress. It's a non-specific physical and mental response to something we perceive as a threat. Now that's a loaded statement. We can have a variety of reactions to something we think is a threat. Now, something I think is a threat, you may not. So there's a lot packed into that. Another way to look at it is when we feel like the demand on us exceeds our capacity to handle it, our resources, our knowledge, our skills, our energy. When that gets out of relationship, and we're in trouble, when it gets out of balance. And so much of this has to do with the relationship that we have with the circumstances of our lives. Now, if you're working along with a worksheet, stress is a normal part of life. And we are adaptive organisms. We wouldn't have had evolution without stress. We wouldn't get to peak performance without stress. We need it to be motivated. It is a normal part of life. We just need to figure out how to handle it better. And we need to figure out how to reduce the amount of it to which we're exposed. So those are different parts of this equation. That's already kind of stressful. So let's practice the first tool for stress management that I'm going to teach you. And this is the first of what I'll refer to later as a cool down to power up, which is cooling your mind and body down so that you can power up your brain. And breath work is the cheapest, oldest, it's invisible. You can be doing this when nobody knows you're doing this, in a meeting when somebody's kind of made you aggravated. It's so great for our bodies, and we have been taught in our world to think our way through things. We're very attached to what we think up in our brains, but sometimes we need to use our bodies to calm our minds down, to go in reverse order. So breathing is the easiest way, soft belly breathing. And what I mean by that, and I promise you, if you do this soft belly breathing, you'll have her abs. Put a hand on your belly and see if you can breathe in down to the bottom of your lungs. They're bellows, they open out. See if you can breathe into the bottom of your lungs so that when you breathe in and your diaphragm goes down, that hand on your belly relaxes out. So just practice that for a second. See if you can breathe in so that your belly softens out as you breathe in. That's bringing the air to the bottom of your lungs. And there are a lot of receptors on the bottom of your lungs that actually immediately tell your brain to calm down. Now you have this tool on the end of your wrist. For most of it, there are 5 fingers there with which you can count. And it's been shown through research that breathing about 6 times per minute is really a healthy rhythm for our body. All systems that are healthy have healthy rhythms. So that would be breathing in 5 and out 5. So take a deep breath in and out, and then count in 2, 3, 4, 5, and out 2, 3, 4, 5. And in, start counting for yourself 5, and out using your fingers. Do about 3 more breaths that way. And then just notice how you feel after that. Do you notice anything? Yeah, really quickly, you used your body to calm your mind. Now, I mentioned that stress is a part of life. In fact, we need stress. If we didn't have stress, we would not ever get motivated. We would never make it to peak performance. We need a challenge to make it to peak performance, to turn our brains on, to get creative, to stay focused and become more effective. But when we sense that the challenge exceeds our perception of our ability to cope with it, our knowledge, resources, and skills to cope with it, then we start to get less efficient, less creative, and the concentration goes down. And we cascade down the side of this hill here towards burnout. Now, this curve is different for the different things in our life. If we're very accomplished at something, this peak would be further over to the right. If we're not very confident about it, the peak would be further over to the left. Another thing that's important about this curve is that when we start to slide away from our peak performance, we're not really aware of it. So how many of you have sat at the computer for 30 minutes and done about 5 minutes of work? I definitely have. We don't know when we're starting to get inefficient or less creative. Other people could tell us, but we don't tend to know it. And that'll make more sense in just a moment. So what can we do to learn to get back to that peak more often? First of all, we can get stress smart, which is what we're talking about today. Building some awareness, learning some tools that will augment our brilliance and our resilience. Then we can get stress strong, which is practicing the habits that are going to make us more fit so that we can handle life and with more ease and more happiness. And then stress wise, which is as we mature and we have some tools and we have some resources, we learn when to use them. We learn how to stay more connected. We learn to do it all with more grace. The important part of this is it is a journey. It is not a 1-hour webinar in which you walk away perfectly zen. It is definitely a journey at going through life, learning more about yourself, learning more about your relationship with stress, and learning some tools to handle it, and learning tools to prevent it or to speak up when it isn't fair stress. Research shows that this coping confidence is really critical and we can build it. This doesn't mean that we should build so much confidence that people can be unfair with us. Sometimes that confidence is to speak up that something's unfair. But when we have this confidence that we are separate from the stress and we have tools that we can handle it, we are more effective and the stress is much less toxic for us. And we just weren't taught this stuff. That's very sad. This should be taught in kindergarten. So what do we feel because we weren't taught it? We feel alone. And that loneliness is even worse. We withdraw because we feel shame. And that is one of the saddest emotions. We feel like we're the only person dealing with this and everybody else seems to be doing it better. I know I certainly felt like that as an intern in my medical training. I thought, I'm the only one who can't handle this. What is wrong with me? I'm here to tell you there's nothing wrong with you. You were not taught different ways to look at this. We weren't taught how our brains handle stress, how to work with our wiring or against our wiring. You weren't taught. So lose the shame. Speaking of working with our wiring and how we weren't taught that, I want to look at this from our brain's perspective, from the wiring perspective. Just for fun, I want you to start making circles with your foot in a clockwise direction. Probably your right foot. Make circles with clockwise direction. Now, I want you to take your right hand and draw the letter 6 with your finger in the air. Air draw, a 6. What happened to your foot? For most of us, it starts going in the other direction. We can't defy our wiring. So let's look at that wiring. Let's look at this from the brain's perspective. Your brain, the 80 billion cells between your ears have a job to do. And their number one priority of your brain is safety. It's taking in billions of bits of information every single moment and sorting it out. Is this a danger to my human or not? Is my human too hungry? Is the temperature the wrong temperature? Is that sneer that my colleague making, is that toxic? Do I need to worry about it? All of that's being processed. It comes in as an input, is reviewed by the brain to decide if you are safe or not. If your brain doesn't feel safe, it flips into automatic reactions that we don't have much control over. This is really critical. It's critical when you're leading, because if your people don't feel safe, if your customers don't feel safe, they can't be at their best to do what you need to do. So safety and trust are really important to our brains. After safety, our brain cares about being satisfied, like getting the nutrients it needs because it has no nutrient stores. And after that, connection. We actually have a social brain, and connection is really, really important for us, which is sort of ironic because one of the things we tend to do because of the shame factor with stress in our go for it society is that we tend to withdraw at the very moment we need to be connected. So sometimes pushing yourself to connect a little bit more is a great buffer against stress. So here's the wiring of the actual system. Your brain, your eyeballs see something in the ground. Looks like a snake, maybe it's a stick. First of all, it's much safer to assume it's a snake. That's why we have a negative bias in the brain. We want to assume something's dangerous because we will survive if we reacted. If we think it was a stick and it happened to be a rattlesnake, we probably don't pass on our genes to other people. So first of all, we have this negative bias. There's this image comes into the eyeballs. It goes to the back of the brain, to the visual cortex. And because we are pre-wired to think that this shape may be of danger, information is sent from there down to a little part in the brain, at the middle of the brain, almond-shaped thing called the amygdala, means almond. And it triggers the alarm bell that we are in danger. It dilates your pupils. It even moves little muscles in your ears, like the dog looking forward so we can hear that rattle better, increases our heart rate, increases our clotting in case the snake bites us, increases our breathing, In the process, it turns off a lot of things. It turns off digestion. It starts telling your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys, to make cortisol, which is the longer acting hormone after the adrenaline. And it takes blood, and this is really important, takes blood from your frontal lobe up here, the thinking human part of the brain, and sends it down to your legs. Why? So you can run from that danger. Now, what I was just describing was your sympathetic nervous system. Most of us have heard this, going back to high school biology, and you're thinking, really? I have to know that now? Well, the more you understand this, the more it makes sense. And when you feel your heart start to increase, you can ask yourself, what's going on? What part of me doesn't feel safe? What do I need to feel safer? Maybe I need a few deep breaths. Maybe I need to assess the situation. This is our sympathetic fight or flight nervous system. But we have another nervous system that gets short-shrift on the attention scan here, and that's the parasympathetic nervous system. These live in balance when we're healthy. We turn on to handle a stress, and then we come back to this resting state of the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's when we can digest and rest and repair, and our immune system can scavenge around and kill nasty looking cells and take care of things, make better memories. So we should be in balance between these two, but we live too strongly in the sympathetic flight or fright. So there are things we can do, like that deep breathing, to pull us back into balance with this. Now, I mentioned that the blood goes from your frontal lobe down to your legs. Well, your frontal lobe holds your prefrontal cortex. That's your executive center of your brain, the one to which we're so attached, the part that we are conscious of. These are the jobs of the prefrontal cortex. So this explains that stupid mistake, hand to the forehead moments that we have. Under stress, we're not thinking as well because we don't have full access to our executive center. This is when we make dumb mistakes. This is when accidents happen. Exxon Valdez. I can't even begin to list all the disasters we know that had to do with humans not thinking. Often stress, lack of sleep, something that has stressed the brain so that the prefrontal cortex can't do its job, is part of the problem. And when we see that things in the prefrontal cortex are not working, we don't think to say, what's going on that my brain isn't doing its best? Sometimes that answer is not that when you're managing a group that are stressed out, sometimes that answer isn't that they don't want to be doing their best. Sometimes the answer is that they're too stressed to be doing their best. And how can you help that? How can you start to recharge their brains? These are just the basics of what a brain needs to be working well. These are universal needs. Then we all have our individual needs. Some people need to be outside more than others. Some people are more introverted and others are more extroverted and get their energy that way. So becoming aware of what you basically need and then your individual needs gives you power to meet those needs so your brain can do its best. Now, the biggest thing probably take home today, which was in the title of this that was mentioned in the beginning, is that so much of stress management has been kind of laid out to us as time management. If you only could manage time better, you wouldn't be stressed. And I'd like to flip that today. Really, it's about energy management. Time management's important because it's how you spend your energy. But energy management is really the key to great stress management. And we have been taught to spend our energy. We have not been taught how to recharge our energy. We know in sports, they know in sports that if you're going to put your star player out there and he or she has this burst of energy, you have to pull them out and rest them on the bench for a minute to go back. But do we do that in the corporate world? Not at all. We truly, truly don't. So learning to recharge your energy is huge. The vast majority of us take way better care of the battery inside of our phones than the battery between our ears. And I'm not saying that to make us all feel badly, but to shift how you think about it and think, how am I physically right now? Am I tired? Am I thirsty? How am I mentally? I'm not firing on all cylinders. Maybe I need to get up and walk around for a minute, stretch, have a glass of water. Emotional energy, that ability to manage the complexities of emotions that we have and accept them, emotions as data, not something we should deny. We're emotional beings for a purpose. Emotions are data that we need to be in motion to solve whatever's going on. And when we get curious about that, we have a lot of power. And then by spiritual energy, I mean connection. The connection to your purpose. It can be to your faith, to your people, to the bigger picture, to your why. This is a model that I like to use because it helps our brains think about where we can impact the overall amount of stress we're feeling and how well we process it. So on this left side here on the demand, this is all of the data that I was talking about, the billions of bits of information coming into your brain to be processed. We can reduce that demand. There are lots of ways to reduce demand. We can delegate things. We can take things off our plate altogether because we don't need to be doing them. We can line up what we do better with our purpose. Really great way to reduce demand. Then there's the perception. And that's where your brain is deciding, is this a threat or not? And that perception, that lens with which we look at stress, is influenced by our genetics, by our experiences. If I've been bitten by a snake, next time I see a snake, I'm probably going to have a different reaction than you are. By the stories we've been told, which is the context of our social world, our business expectations, our family expectations, how we were told, whether we were raised in the buck up kid world or the there dear world. There's so much that goes into how we assign whether something is a threat or not, which doesn't mean that any of us really think being, cut off by a car in an accident, is gray or white. There's no gray zone to that. That's pretty much a threat. But the vast majority of threats, there are gray zones too. Whether we are thinking about worries from the past or projecting to the forward, we have a lot of work we can do in there. And perception is a place we can really change how much energy we're spending on that stressor. And that's key. So this is how much energy is demanded. This is how we assign how much of us we're going to spend on it. And then this is how much energy we have to spend, our capacity. So if our brain decides that, no, this isn't a stressor, it goes back to what it was doing. If it is a stressor, its next question is, can I handle this stressor? You're back to that peak curve again, do I have what it takes to handle it? Yes, I've got this. That's a great feeling. It can be called eustress, EU stress, good stress. But if your answer is no, then it triggers the stress alarm. And that's about 1,400 chemical reactions. That's the dilating of the pupils, the increasing of the heart rate. All of that is triggered. So I hope this makes sense and lets you think about, is my problem that I have too much demand? Or maybe I'm judgy today, or I'm feeling wimpy and I'm just overwhelmed by it all? Or is it that I'm not taking care of myself and recharging and I've lost my capacity? Going back to your worksheet, we have gone through knowing that stress is part of life and that your brain's number one priority is safety, and that stress management is energy management. The next one, number 4, is that stress is additive. So we all know that the big things in life are stressful. The life passages and divorce, job loss, moving, all of those things are big stressors and have point systems according to psychology. But the little things add up as well. It's the day that you spilled something, there is no toilet paper, and you know that maybe this was March 2020 and you know you're not going to be able to find any. And all these little things add up because you're spending your energy on them. And when you've spent more than you have, you start to feel too much stress. The demands on us build up in life, and our capacity tends to go down a little bit because we weren't trained to build it. We can fix this curve by increasing our capacity and being more selective about our demands. The next point, number 5 in the 5 things to know about stress, is that stress is more contagious than the Delta variant. And so when one person is stressed in a work team, everybody is reacting. And this makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. If you came back to the cave and you're like all freaked out, I need to get my stress reaction system ramping up. So I have mirror neurons that read what's going on with you so that I start to get ready to deal with a threat as well. This was excellent if there was a tiger outside the cage. It is not excellent if somebody on a team is stressed and the rest of us are feeling somewhat stressed and don't want to be triggered by it. So it's really important to remember that taking care of our own stress is helping to take care of other people as well. And if you're leading, helping everyone manage their stress is an important part of being productive. So let's talk about, so we've gone through the 5 things to know about stress. Let's talk about what you can do about stress. And the very first thing is to raise your awareness of what your relationship is with it and who you are. So I asked you all in an email before this, what do you notice first when you feel stressed? This chart are some typical things, but if you think about the thing you notice first, for me, I get tight in my jaw, or I get headaches, but that starts from all of my neck and shoulders getting tight. The first thing that you notice, if that becomes your dashboard, is when you have an opportunity to reverse the cascade. So being aware of what it is you notice first, and a fun question is to ask somebody else what they notice first about you, that becomes your dashboard. That's like the little battery on your phone that tells you what you need to know or not know. Just think for a moment, and I left you some room on the worksheet to go back through later if you want, or now, what it is that you notice first. And I also have on this worksheet some other questions for you all to do. And I'm going to give you just a minute to look at the worksheet and go through them. Just jot off your initial answer. What is it that matters most to you? This is our GPS. If you just had to give a gut answer to this, what do you care most about in life? Because that's the thing that you're going to feel is at risk if you feel danger. Then what is it that you first know when you're starting to get stressed? What's your cue that maybe you need recharging? Go ahead and fill that in. Then what tends to trigger you the fastest? And I'm going quickly because we pretty much know these off the top of our head, but looking at them can really give us some power. Because we tend to repeat our same triggers. And what happens, what's your typical, you're really getting stressed out. What happens for you? What's your response? Some of us withdraw, some of us overwork, some of us underwork, some of us undereat. I always wanted to be an undereater and it hasn't happened yet. The next question is, what strengths do you bring to the stressful world? It's a wonderful world, but it is a stressful world. What makes you strong in that world? They're great. You can take the Strengths Finder from, it's not Google. If you just Google Strengths Finder, you'll find it and learn your strengths. There's also the VIA Character Strengths out of University of Pennsylvania. It's a free assessment. that is fun to do as a team, and realize what makes you strong. For me, one of the things is humor. And when I read that, I thought, oh, I'm such a fluffy lightweight, but it's not true. So what makes you strong? And then thinking back on your past, what has gotten you through tough times? Writing that down is very powerful. So just getting to know yourself is the first step to building better stress awareness and stress power. I also really like, under building awareness, building habits of awareness, because we have to interrupt our busy. Isn't that a weird, strange saying? We have to interrupt our busy to become present, because when we're busy, we're thinking outside and sort of on, like the train is really zooming down the rails. And we have to interrupt that to figure out where we are and how we are. And those are check-ins. And you can do it with your phone. There are lots of apps that will do check-ins. You can set alarms and just check in. How am I right now, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? What do I need? And if you want the leadership question to go with that, who do I want to be right now? But we have to make that a habit. We have to interrupt ourselves to build that awareness muscle back up, so that we don't get as depleted, so that the battery on us doesn't go all the way down to negative, and we charge ourselves more often. And I have found that tying habits to habits makes a lot more sense. Habits save our brain's energy, and tying habits together is easier. This is one that's worked for so many clients that I've worked with. And it's, as you go through a doorway, you're making a transition. You're automatically going to go through that doorway, but you start seeing doorways as a moment of awareness. You take a deep breath as you go through the door, and you ask yourself, how am I? First of all, this sets a nice boundary between what you were doing outside of that door and what you're going to be doing inside of that door. It gives you a nice deep breath, good parasympathetic charge, and you can ask yourself how you are, build that awareness, become present for what you're about to do. And if you want that leadership question to it, ask who you want to be on the other side of that door. Really powerful, super easy thing to do and build into your life. Again, just a tweak, because overhauls are hard to do. So let's stop again and do the breathing one more time, except I'm going to add questions to it. And I'm going to let you count for yourself. Do 3 5 5 5 breaths. And on your first one, you're going to ask yourself, how's my energy? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. On the second, what do I need, or what's needed now? And the third breath, who do I want to be? So take a deep breath in and out, and start your 5 in, asking yourself how your energy is. And I hope you find that just an easy skill to practice. The more you practice it, the faster you teach your brain to ramp up that parasympathetic nervous system to counteract the stressed out sympathetic nervous system. And by asking yourselves questions and using curiosity, you can shift it faster. The next part I want to talk about, the next skill, are mindset superpowers. Mindset is how we decide to look at the world, the lens that we're using when we look at what the challenge is in front of us. And I have found that there are several mindset superpowers. First of all, getting calm, because without a calm body, we don't have access to our frontal lobe. So doing breath work or some kind of calm down to cool down to power up technique like we just did, something to get yourself physically calm so you can be mentally clear, because the next superpower is getting clear. What is it that's really kind of at risk for you? Because we tend to get stressed out over the wrong things. We're very, very sloppy about what the last straw is for us. And when we get clear about what we're really feeling, we have a lot more strength. The next is curious. You've seen I've been asking a lot of questions through that because curiosity turns on your frontal lobe. It reduces the judgment. If you're just curious, you're less in that inner critic space of there's something wrong with me that I can't handle this, or there's something wrong with him that he's dumping so much on me. When you get curious about what's really going on in the situation, then you can come up with more creative solutions. And you can be more courageous because it takes courage to be human. It takes courage to speak up for what you want. It takes courage to take care of yourself. It takes huge courage because we weren't taught to do that. In fact, we've been rewarded for not doing it. And we have to shift that in our culture now. We can do that as leaders. We can work with teams and come up with ways that will bring out the best of our energy, which will bring out the best of our work. So calm, clear, curious, courageous, compassionate, because compassion is a superpower. There's a great TED Talk by Kristen Neff, N-E-F-F, on the power of compassion, and that includes for ourselves, being kinder to ourselves instead of criticizing, which really doesn't empower us to do anything. And the last superpower is grateful. Really, grateful is an amazing superpower. There's a company called Heart Math, which has guided visualizations using gratitude. And the research on gratitude, CEOs who practice gratitude at night are much more effective in their leadership capabilities. So starting a meeting by saying what you're grateful for that day or what's a win for that day, very powerful tools. So we've gone through a number of ways to think about ramping up our stress powers, and we went through understanding what our brain's doing about it. And we've gone through tools to calm down in the moment, building the awareness, tools to calm down in the moment, to cool down, to power up, and what works best for you. Mindset superpowers. And the fourth one I'm going to talk about are recharge habits. Again, as I said before, having a habit is something that saves your brain energy. Think about this. If you got up in the morning and brushing your teeth, which I hope is a habit for you, brushing your teeth was not a habit. Think about how much energy you would spend if you had to think about where to put the toothbrush, which direction you're going to go, which teeth you're going to start with. Are you going to go up and down, back and forth? How much toothpaste should you use? How long should you do it? If you had to think about every step of getting ready in the morning, you would be too exhausted to go to work. So our brain has done those over and over again. We've practiced them like riding a bike. Our neurons wire together. They get a myelin sheath, which is like insulation on them, insulation on the wiring, so that it can do it super rapidly and below the level of consciousness. It's a habit. Well, what is the win-win if we create habits out of the little things that add up to more energy for us? So learning to build in habits of recharging yourself so that they don't take a lot of effort, but that your battery stays better charged during the day, lets you end the day feeling a whole lot better and a whole lot more capable and confident in handling what's in your day. These are things on this slide that have been shown to be helpful. I've done this in workshops hundreds of times, and we come up with some really fun ones. On your workout sheet here, your worksheet here, I made a chart for you. And I want you to take just a couple of minutes to dash off the top of your head, and I'm really just going to give you 2 minutes. The top of your head, what do you need more of physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? And what are the biggest drains, some of which you could lose or avoid? What tends to drain you the most and what tends to energize you the most? And I'm just going to give you like a minute and a half now to jot off some ideas for yourself. Most of us know these things, but looking at them on paper can help you brainstorm ideas for the tiny tweaks you can make that would make a difference. And this is when I wish we were live so we could discuss them and brainstorm together. After you've jotted down a number of these, I want you to go back and put a few circles around several things you think would have the most bang for the buck. For a lot of people, for example, that's sleep. Getting more sleep would have a huge influence on how you feel. And the vast majority of Americans are sleep deprived or have sleep challenges, or they're in that cycle where stress causes lack of sleep, which causes more stress. So circle just a few that sound like something that would really make a difference for you. And then this is a bit of a different question. Put a star by one or two that you just kind of feel drawn to. Not that there's something you should do, but it's like, that sounds easy. I could drink another glass of water each morning. Put a star by the ones that sound easiest to do, most exciting to do, or you're just kind of drawn to. Because those aren't always the same thing. You can work on the sleep later. One of the cool things about our brains is if we pick something that's a big enough challenge that we know we'll be excited that we did it, but not too much of a challenge to overwhelm us, and we're successful, it makes us more successful at the next one. And that's been shown through research. So maybe you need to sleep more, but choosing to spend 2 weeks drinking an extra glass of water and you feel good about yourself may make that taking on the sleep challenge easier, or the exercise challenge. Or deciding to call a friend on your way home from work because you're feeling disconnected from people. Or deciding to speak up, which could be one of the more challenging things to do. So go ahead after you've done that and write down a couple things in the lines underneath there that you want to play with, you want to experiment with. And I use the word play on purpose and experiment on purpose because you want to do this with compassion, with lightness of heart, and with kind of an attitude of play. Let me play around with this and see if it makes a difference for me. Instead of it being this onerous thing that I've got to do in order to be better at stress management so I can handle a ton more work. Not the way to go. More like, you know, I'm on this planet for a while longer, and if I play around with drinking a little bit more water, would that be a better way to be? You can do these as teams. You can make stress buddies. That often works. And I really encourage you in meetings, in leading, in talking with each other, within families, to start talking about this as energy. That, you know, how are we right now today? What do we need? What's getting drained? How much energy does it take to do this? That makes this a safe topic. And remember, going back, our brains really, really like safety. When we change stress management into energy management, we've made it a safe topic for the workplace. A workplace that in the past, until COVID, really made talking about stress difficult. I think stress has been allowed to come out of the closet, and we can talk about it. And for that, I'm actually grateful for this horrible, horrible pandemic to have made it safer to discuss this and to have more of these types of webinars and start into programs where we get stress smart and stress strong and stress wise and start this journey together and have more human conversations about what it is to be human and manage our energy in the workplace and do our best and feel our best. So thank you for working through that with me. Let's see if I can get this to change. I wanted to just show you in a slide that you all will have that these are the resilience strategies that have really been proven, great science behind them. I encourage you to be creative with this and have a little fun with it. I've had people say, just turn on music at work, huge difference. Don't forget touch, scheduling a massage, doing things that use your body, calm your body more, using the senses, aromatherapy, setting a place where you transition, putting in boundaries. I had one client drive home and she knew her head was spinning with work when she got home. So she started playing music or listening to just fiction on the way home. And she would park about a block away before she got home and take 5 minutes for herself, do some deep breaths, and decide who she wanted to be when she got home. Made a huge difference, just putting a boundary between work and home. A lot harder to do in our 24/7 lives, isn't it? Boundaries can be very wonderful. The one that I really want to mention on this is active relaxation. And that sounds like an oxymoron, but when we bring attention to actively relaxing our body, not just plopping down on the sofa and picking up the clicker, but doing the breath work, doing something called progressive relaxation, following a guided visualization on an app. I like apps like Insight Timer or 10% Happier, Happify. There's so many of them. But when you actively work on bringing that parasympathetic nervous system back on board, it adds up over time and makes you much stronger. By building rituals and habits of these things, you get stronger and happier. And you can do them as teams, you can do them as families, and you can have your personal agendas as well. So these are all proven strategies. Because in the end, you matter. I just love this monkey sticking his tongue back out, because taking care of ourselves is noticed by other people. It's copied by other people thanks to those mirror neurons. We have a society that has taught us that we should sacrifice ourselves. And yes, serving others is very, very noble. But if you don't take care of the person who's serving, it doesn't last. So you really do matter. And this is in here. I hope you all can hear this well. To remind us, one, that humor is important and that simplicity and sometimes just letting go into a lighter space or watching something funny or simplifying down to how a baby sees the world is great fun. And why didn't it play? I'm going to scooch it ahead just a little bit. There's nothing better than that, is there? This is who we are. Our brains are happy in the world, and we can get back to that. Maybe not to that level of simplicity where all you have to do is watch ripped paper, but we can get back to finding the joy in the little things in life. And that's being mindful, that's being grateful, and that's being strong and courageous at the same time. So hopefully looking at this through the lens of how your brain sees the world, how you're wired, what this actual stress reaction is, and that it's designed for acute stress, but not for the chronic stress that we're living under. So we need to find ways to manage our energy during this chronic stress, to be more aware of who we are, what our relationship is, how our energy is, to build in these habits that keep us aware, that keep us present, that keep us focused on what really matters for us, and continue to grow, to ask the courageous questions among fellow human beings that will make us all bring more humanity to the workplace, to society. Goodness knows we definitely need it at this point. So I want to thank you all for being here today. As they mentioned, I will be on after this, and I will love to entertain any questions. I know I put a lot of information in front of you, and very quickly, I encourage you to print the worksheet off again and do it on your own, or do it as a family, or do it as a team. Just start to think, what is it that would make me stronger? So I'm curious, Tracy, if we have any questions?
So we have one question, and it is, how do you prevent a situation from getting too stressful to manage? Kind of like an in the moment thing.
In the moment, those would be the cool down to power up things. There is I think it's Crisis Prevention Institute has a great de-escalation list if you Google that. But there are a number of things. First, get yourself calm. Know that you're triggered. That first sign that this is ramping up, or maybe the other person is ramping up and you can feel yourself meeting it. You need to calm down. So the breath work can do that. Walk away, move. Feel your feet on the ground, put your hand on your heart or on your stomach to bring awareness down into your body. I have a lot of people who, when they start to get really triggered, people don't know why you're doing this, but to put a hand on their heart, which is self-soothing, a really important thing. It's self-soothing, but it also brings your body into play, and it brings your values and heart-based, what is it that I really want to happen in this situation? What am I really trying to convey to this person? And maybe I need to walk away and come back when I'm clearer with it. But there are a number of de-escalation tricks. Use your body more. We weren't taught to do that. We are sort of walking heads with all this busyness up here to which we're attached. And when you bring it down into your body, you've got a lot of power. I've had some people just rub their feet on the floor, just become aware of being grounded. So that's a great question. When you figure out what works fast for you, and there are a number of things you can play with, and there's all kinds of apps that will help. But when you figure out what works for you, practice it, practice it, practice it, so that your brain learns, okay, just as fast as I'm getting ramped up, I can calm down again. Any other questions?
So that's the only one that I saw come in.
Okay.
But everybody's got your information here on the screen. Here's another one.
Okay.
What are some warning signs of stress?
And I'm going to assume you mean warning signs for yourself of stress. And that chart that I gave you, that what people typically feel, has a bunch of them. For a lot of us, we don't know it at first. Sometimes stress is a silent killer, and that's the very sad part. If your blood pressure is up and you don't know it because that's how your body has handled the stress, that's a little harder to know. So taking care of yourself and getting regular checkups is important. But for many of us, one of the first signs is our sleep is being interfered with. We're not sleeping as well, or we're waking up with that 3 o'clock rumination. Rumination is another where you seem stuck. You start to think about something else and you just keep coming back to what the problem is, and you feel very stuck in that problem. Irritability is the #1 sign of stress to other people. Now, a lot of us can feel when we're being irritable, but there are some people who are totally oblivious to it and actually cause stress. So irritability is one. Muscle tension, very big for an awful lot of people. The misfiring of the brain, not being able to connect as quickly, get your words as quickly, like you see me do during my presentations. It's that misfiring or making mistakes or just, when you don't feel like you. Thanks for asking that.
Sure. Well, like I said, I haven't seen any other questions come in. They've got your contact information. Thank you so much for, I know I personally picked up some stuff. That whole interrupt my busy, that spoke to me specifically. So
That's hard to do.
It is. And who's not ever busy, right?
Yeah, snap.
Yeah.
We need to interrupt it. And when we do, the payoff is fabulous. I encourage you all to go to my website, sign up. I promise you, I put out hardly anything these days, but I do have a bunch of resources. You can also go to stress.org. The American Institute of Stress, they have amazing resources. There's a great movie, Mismatched. There's so much out there, but American Institute of Stress vets it so that you're getting real science and not a bunch of, we're all going to be Zen monks and it's real easy, because it's not.
Right. It's not.
It's not.
Well, thanks to everyone for attending today's webinar. As I had mentioned at the top, we're going to post Dr. Ackrill's slides and the recording of this webinar at the ptworkforce.org site. And those of you who attended, you're also going to get an email from us next week with this link, with the links to it. So, Dr. Ackrill, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. And everyone, enjoy your weekend. It's a Friday. Go out and practice all that stress management stuff.
Friday is always a better context.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone.